What's up, Buttercup? In this episode, I'm joined by Jessie Giroux, a serial entrepreneur, travel expert, and passionate advocate for families navigating life with special needs. Jessie shares her journey of pivoting from real estate into the travel industry and how she's built businesses that align with both purpose and profit, and why she believes travel is one of the most powerful investments we can make in ourselves. Whether you're in the middle of a business transition or just dreaming about your next trip, Jessie's story is full of wisdom, warmth, and real world insight. Enjoy the episode. My name is Barb Davids, and this is the Small Business Sweet Spot, a place for business owners wondering what matters in growing their business. Episodes range from quick, tactical advice on improving website visibility, marketing, and analytics, to guest interviews with experts on topics like productivity, branding, and mindset to support the whole business owner. Let's find the sweet spot between business and life so you can enjoy both. Enjoy the episode. Well, thank you, Jessie, so much for taking the time to meet with me. And we're going to talk about actually kind of quite a few things. So how are you doing today?
I'm wonderful, enjoying some amazing Arizona rain that is rare, but loving it anyways.
Isn't that crazy? I was out this morning at a yoga thing and it was pouring down rain and everybody was like running to their cars because it was like right when it was coming down super, super hard. And I was like, I looked on my app, I'm like, oh, 13 minutes. Great. I'm just going to stand here for 13 minutes and wait so I don't get drenched.
Yeah, I'm hoping that it doesn't mess with technology or the thunder because it's pretty loud. It's pretty exciting sounding. So I hope it doesn't really come through. But if it does, enjoy that, weather ASMR-ish.
There you go. There you go. I think we're on Zoom, but I think they do a really good job nowadays about, I always ask if people can hear stuff in the background and everybody's always like, nope, nope,
Oh,
nope, can't hear anything.
good, good.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So we met through a women's network here in Gilbert, Arizona. It's Women 360. It's put on by the wonderful Heather Ferrari. And you were just so kind when I went to my first meeting there, and you just came up and you just gave me a hug. And I was like, okay, first of all, who is hugging me? But then I thought, well, gosh, you're
Guilty.
just so nice to do that. So thanks for like just making that first move. That was very cool.
Well, thank you for noticing that. Those kinds of networking experiences for me are new. Again, I've been out of the networking in person type of thing just for a career pause that I took to go back to school. So getting back out there and being in person with other people, I kind of honestly am a little awkward. And I tend to notice, not saying that I notice you being awkward, but I tend to notice other people that are just not being interacted with. And then I'm like, I'm going to go interact with them. And then I don't know what to do with my hands. And hug is usually what it ends up being, I guess.
Yeah, that is awesome. Well, and also I want to give everybody, so this is the small business sweet spot. If you could briefly touch on who you help and how, like what is your sweet spot?
Well, I am a serial entrepreneur who married a serial entrepreneur, and we have several successful businesses. But I've been in a season of pivot to try to really nail down where are we going with some of our portfolio. And I have been out networking for Travel Big with J2. We have a passion for helping all people book that travel. It shouldn't be a checklist that they have to do. It should be a story that they get to tell, and we want to help them with that. So that's kind of where I am with helping people get out there and get on a plane and go see those places.
And your road into the serial entrepreneurship is kind of what we're going to talk about today, the pivoting
Yeah.
and the sort of messiness, because I've been hearing a lot of people that have been kind of quote pivoting also around what they're doing or kind of redoing their business. It's a lot of like uncertainty. So when you started understanding you were a serial entrepreneur and you started thinking about the different things you wanted to do with your business, is there anything like that stood out to you in terms of what you were thinking about, like, oh, is that what that like, am I supposed to change my business? Like, what was it feeling like when you started going down this road?
Yeah. Well, having been in the same business with my husband for many, many years, it started to feel really scary, to be honest. We had something strong. We had, a center point. I knew what I was doing. I knew what my role was, but I was feeling burnout because it wasn't a passion. It wasn't what I wanted to be doing. I always told him I don't want to be a real estate agent. So I just never actually got my license in real estate, kind of as my exit plan a little bit. And we had to have some of those messy conversations about, well, it wouldn't be me abandoning what we've already grown here. It would just be taking my skill set that I've actually developed here and doing something new with it. And so becoming comfortable with that and actually sitting in that is kind of a little bit of my growth story that I'm still going through, to be fair.
Mm. And so you went from the real estate company to the travel company, right?
Well,
Or both, actually. They're both going, yeah.
kind of, yeah. We've been in travel on some level since we met in our marriage 20 years ago. My husband studied hotel restaurant management. I actually did reservations for Best Western way back at the Hotel of Restaurant Management Reservation Center up at NAU in the late 90s. So I've had a passion for tourism and travel since back then. And our life has just taken a myriad of turns because of, things that happen, lifes. We've had autism come into our family, and that took us down some advocacy trails for a while. But when it came down to actually building a portfolio with my spouse of businesses that we were going to, help fund our lifestyle, help build a legacy to leave behind for our disabled son, we had to nail down what are the kind of businesses that we could grow. It could sustain a lifestyle living here in the East Valley. And real estate obviously was up and down, but it's been stable because we niched into property management. But we weren't always dealing with the happiest of customers. We wanted to be dealing with people who were happy to talk to us. And so it was like, well, you know what? People are always asking me, how is it to go to Disneyland with someone with autism? And I found myself helping a lot of people plan amazing trips, even though they had special needs. And so that became kind of a passion. It was like people actually enjoyed talking to us. So we both talked about it, and it became a passion for both of us, and kind of something we grew and started doing in 2017 under another brokerage. And we realized, yeah, this could be a retirement path. Once we get to a point of wanting to grow something that we could run, while we walked away from an office. And that was just kind of how we landed in this. So we've been in it, and, we had a global emergency pandemic. Travel was massively affected there. So when you talk about pivot, you have to understand, like, when you dive into something, sometimes it doesn't mean you have to abandon it because the economy changed or something. I'm pivoting in all kinds of ways, even in just the travel that I'm selling. So
You have a unique perspective because you have a son with a disability with autism. What's different when you're planning trips for families when they're in the same situation?
I think the empathy that comes from having my own experiences and then getting out there and braving those experiences in the real world is mostly the thing that somebody could relate to me with. If they were like, can I even trust that we could actually accomplish a trip as big as Disneyland or Disney World with my special needs accommodated for? And I think that that's kind of the thing that sets me apart and gives me that trust for people and why they want to keep coming back to me and asking me those questions and asking me to help them guide them in those steps.
I interrupt this wonderful podcast with a brief note for those of you who want to fix your website, but it keeps slipping down the list. Between too many decisions, too little time, and not knowing who to trust, and so it's just easier to put it off. That's where my website Power Up plan comes in. It gives you a clear, personalized assessment of what's worth changing now, what can wait, and how to get the most impact with the time you do have. One client said the suggestions on which ones to do first that will make a big impact was the most helpful piece. The website Power Up plan is a simple, one-time service that gives you answers personalized to you and your website. Visit compassdigitalstrategies.com/powerup or click the link in the show notes when you're ready. All right, let's jump back to the episode. So do you set up everything for them? And then what do they need to do? Like if somebody has a child with disability, what do they actually need to do? Or do you literally do it all?
Well, it just really depends on what they need. I kind of I've been trying to nail down exactly how do I tell people what is it that I get when I work with you. And I try to tell them it's kind of like a virtual assistant, but travel related. I can sit down, I can body double, I can do a Zoom just like we're doing now. We'll pull up screens together, we can type together, you can look at things. I'll show you my screen, I'll show you what I'm finding. We can talk about the things that you're concerned about. We talk about what kinds of things might your family encounter if they were doing this. Or it can be as easy as, hey, Jesse, I want to go to Disneyland. Can you get me some tickets? And it's a text message. It just really is customizable based on what the need of the client is. And that
Okay.
only comes when I have a relationship back and forth with people. So,
Yeah, yeah. And you were talking about pivoting. So what else are you thinking of doing?
well, it's not always the things that I'm thinking of doing. I have a really strong faith background and I understand that I have a purpose here. Why I am here is guided a lot by my faith. I do believe in Jesus Christ. And so, as a faith believer, I'm heavily involved locally, not only in the networks that I'm involved in for my business, but in a local church here. My husband and I have always been involved in serving together in a local church as a way to give back to the community, but also as a way to, grow heavily in our faith. And with that comes when you're heavily involved, when you're a long, mature Christian in your faith, you often find that you're told, use your jobs, your everyday jobs to share the light of the world. And so I often do that through some of our community work that we do through 410 Real Estate and Property Management. And that has launched into a mentor and discipleship program at Justice University with Prof. Gian Shively, where they uplift and give a platform to young college athletes who are on a different track here in the Southeast Valley. So it's just one of these things where I can tell people about travel. I can share about my mission trip and how I've gone to Africa and how that gave me a totally different perspective of how I relate with my own body here in America as a plus size woman. And that actually lends into the storytelling of my brand of Travel Big, because it's an encouragement for everybody of all sizes to get out there and do it, because you might meet somebody halfway across the world who sees you in a different way and gives you a self-confidence that you never had. And I want people to have those same kinds of experiences when they've booked travel and they've gone somewhere. It doesn't just have to be family memories with Tinkerbell and Mickey Mouse. Those are favorite memories of our families. But I really want people to get out there and travel the world, because I know that that's part of our mission as Christians as well. So,
If somebody else is trying to think about their business and maybe they're kind of in the middle of thinking about, is this the right thing for them? Should they expand? Should they think about another arm? Or just in general, kind of wondering if they should change it up. Is there anything that you can give for advice in terms of how you've been able to process some of the building the other businesses and where you might be going?
yeah, absolutely. The first thing I have to say is that you've got to have systems in place that are already functioning well and oiled before you're able to kind of start pulling away and distancing yourself from your baby. So I have an amazing team at 410 Real Estate and Property Management that we've empowered to do a lot of the work that my husband and I, as a spouse couple that started something more than a decade together, we're doing as just a team. And that's grown into a team program. Also, with all of our vendors that we've pulled in, we understand we aren't just the property managers going out on site. We're the property managers sending vendors into tenants' homes. And we have to build those relationships with quality vendors here in the valley, and we have those relationships because of the networking that we do both at the Gilbert Chamber and through programs like the Women 360. We find quality vendors. So you have to get those kinds of things going and those systems in place, and once you have that, then you can realize that you're not abandoning something. It is like what I've already kind of hinted at before. You're taking those skill sets that you've already nurtured in one thing and you're planting them in a new garden, and you can go and grow. Now, it took a lot of time for me to get comfortable being the travel agent in the room, if I'm fair. And I'm still working on that. And sometimes I put on that persona for me, especially in in-person networking, and that might be in the style that I wear, how I show up, in what I'm wearing. If I'm carrying around my Disney bag that has a cruise logo on it, something that can get people associating branding and travel with me when they've been associating me with, disability advocacy or property management for so long. So
Yeah.
those are some of the things that I would have people start thinking about of how would you?
Is there another
Mm,
topic that you can think of that maybe spurred that we hadn't quite touched on?
The idea of making travel isn't just something that you buy, it's like an investment. It's an
Mm,
investment that you're investing in.
yeah.
Probably because why I would say that travel is an investment that you're investing in, not just something that you're buying, is because the return is on that investment, in that your self care is something that is taken care of. You're removing yourself from your work and putting yourself into a new environment where maybe you can take a telescopic view and look back at the work that you're doing as an entrepreneur, and say, hey, what are some of the systems that maybe when I get back into the office after this great trip that I've just had, that are things that I can implement better or focus on. Travel helps you get out of that stagnant, sitting in that same spot, doing that same routine. And it just oftentimes will lead people to growth in their business and they didn't even realize it. So I always tease people and I say, book the trip, because when you have the trip booked, all of a sudden the contracts start getting signed, the calls start coming in, and things start feeling a lot more steady in that business. I never promise it, but it's not ever been anything that I've seen statistically go bad when I've told people that that's something that they could invest in and that their return on investment would be tenfold whatever they are actually spending on their trip. So that's how I reconcile spending money on travel sometimes, because there's a lot too. And I'm like, do I do eco travel? Do I go to a place where I can actually serve? There's a lot of volunteer work trips. You can go on mission trips through church. You can see the world that way, or you can sit on a cruise ship and just see ports and, a couple of malls here and there. There's lots of different ways to travel. There's adventure travels. We're partnering up with lots of people with our collaborations in the Women 360. There's adventure travel, people who just focus on amazing small group travel trips locally and in the mountains with guides and things like that. And everyone can just get out there and see places and leave their mark on places too. So that's one of the biggest things about why I'm always so keen on people investing in travel. And as we're coming up to holiday seasons too, people giving the gift of travel instead of the gift of some material thing that they can put under the tree. That is definitely something we always invested in with our family, our children. Sometimes they maybe didn't understand that they didn't open a gift right then, but now that as they're adults, now they can look back on the gift of travel and how that enriched them through their lives better than the piece of junk that might have broken 3 weeks later.
Yeah. Yeah. I worked with a travel agent back, it was like, I don't know, a long time ago. I think it's been like 12 years now or something like that. And it was one of the best things that I did, frankly, because it took a lot of the weight off of my mind trying to figure out what I was going to do, where I was going to go, because it was in a different country. And I think that's the same with like Disneyland. If you've never been, it can feel or seem like it's overwhelming. Or even if you want to go to the mountains, if you're never in the mountains or you're not sure who to trust of who can take you, that's where you would come in. And I think I'm kind of biased because I do think it's a helpful piece of it, because you don't have to worry and do one more thing when you've already been doing one more thing all the time for your business. And it just was so much simpler because I didn't have to think about anything. I really appreciate not having to think about stuff like that. So, yeah.
And those are my ideal clients. I love people that are just like, here's what I want to do. I have this idea. Can you put together some things? And then we're going to chat about it. And I'm going to say, yes, yes, no, no, yes, yes. Okay, here we get. That's project planning, but just it's trip planning instead. So,
Yeah. Yeah. What is one thing that you hope the listener walks away from this with?
I would have to say, don't let one successful venture stop you from building something else. Your skills are definitely transferable. You can take that time and see what you've built, and you can plant your foot and you can pivot to something else, and you'll be great at it.
That is awesome. Okay, Jesse, if somebody would like to talk to you further about any of those things, where can they find you?
I would love for more people to interact with me on our social medias on Instagram. So that'd be Travel Big with J2. You'll see our big cartoon faces on there of Jason and I, or also on my personal Instagram. I love telling stories through visuals on Instagram. That's Jessie_Giroux, GEROUX as in X-ray.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Do you have a website too?
We do travelbigwithj2.com.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it. I'm so glad to know you.
Barb, I've enjoyed getting to know you so much, and you are such an asset to the Women 360 and to small business owners here in the East Valley. This podcast that you do to help us really nail down what our sweet spot is probably one of the most innovative things that I've seen anyone doing here in a while. And I'm just so grateful that you brought me on it as a guest. So thank
Oh,
you.
that's so sweet. Thank you so much. I'm like totally blushing over here.
Oh, you should.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And that's a wrap on today's episode. If you enjoyed it, would you be so kind as to forward it to a friend or write a review? That tiny minute is how this show gets in front of other business owners just like you who are passionate about growing their business. I thank you kindly, and I'll see you in the next sweet spot.